back with another installment. We're at Sacramento Kings already. We're on the home stretch, baby, for this series. If you guys, this is your first time checking out a vid in this series, I got the playlist both in the description box and the comments where I'm doing the top 5 players for each NBA team. For my list, I decided to go under the conditions I'm only going to use a certain player one time. So, in this case, certain players that have history with the Sacramento Kings but were better known for being with another team will not be on this list. And if you're wondering, this time I have headphones in for those if anyone's curious. That's because I'm listening to music in the background, which I wasn't doing the previous ones. But without any further ado, let's dive right into it. We're in the home stretch with the top 5 greatest Sacramento Kings / Cincinnati Royals of all time. And I will be including guys from both, / Kansas City Kings. So I'll be including the Sacramento / Kansas City Kings / Cincinnati Royal days for the team. So without any further ado, let's start off with a few honorable mentions. We're going to start off with a few honorable mentions on this one. First, we're going to go with number 5, Nate Archbald. He was one of the great three-point shooters of his era during the 70s Kings team. Not a truly great player, but one of the better players in their franchise's history, and certainly worthy of at least an honorable mention. And now another one we're going to go with on this one. We're going to go with Peja Stojaković. He was a good role player, multi-time All-Star, great shooter from out of Serbia. Was part of that historic 1996 draft class alongside Allen Iverson, the late great Kobe Bryant, Ray Allen, Stephon Marbury, and many other names, but hey, Peja Stojaković was one of the better Sacramento Kings of all time. Maybe not a truly great player, but a good player, and certainly a guy worthy of a spot on this team. He was there alongside Mike Bibby, another honorable mention. Was a good offensive presence, knew how to play his role well. They meshed well with Chris Webber, who will be on this top 5 list. And then you get... So that's another honorable mention there. Peja Stojaković and Mike Bibby. The last honorable mentions, Domantas Sabonis, who's stepping up, having his breakout year as of February 14, 2025, as of the time I'm recording this. Not a great... the reason I got him as honorable mention because he's just getting started at his peak. Maybe a few years from now he could be a top 5 King, but as of now I just got him as an honorable mention because his peak is just getting started. Now moving on to the top 5 list itself. Starting off with number 5, we're going to go Mitch Richmond. You remember him during the 90s, multi-time All-Star for the Kings, won the 95 All-Star MVP. Shame this wasn't the best era of Kings basketball, but Mitch Richmond was one of the faces of that franchise. One of the better players. He was, matter of fact, the guy that helped keep the Sacramento Kings somewhat relevant. Let's see, certainly worthy of a spot on the top 5 greatest Kings players of all time. But I only got him as number 5. Moving on to number 4, I'm going to go with DeMarcus Cousins. Now, we remember Cousins mainly for his later years dealing with issues with coaches. We remember his later years flipping from team to team, trying to ring chase. But a lot of people forget during his peak, he was a force on both sides, offense and defense. And he was a dominant center during that time. Unfortunately, Boogie Cousins was stuck with some poor Sacramento Kings teams. Now, and he did have some issues with coaches throughout the years. Now, part of that I feel is on DeMarcus Cousins being immature, but part of it's also on the Sacramento Kings front office not really giving him anything good to work with. I still feel like the reason I got Cousins over Mitch Richmond, because I truly believe if you take DeMarcus Cousins, put him from his peak on a better team with better structure, they're a championship contender. He was that good at his peak as an individual player, but a lot of people forget that because they remember some of the negative clashes he had with the Kings front office and with coaches. They remember his later years hopping from team to team. But you put that aside, on the court, he was a dominant presence. And one of the main names that comes to mind when you think of great Sacramento Kings players. Now, on to number 3. We're going to go with Chris Webber. A tremendous power forward. Easily one of the best big men of the early 2000s. He came in the late 90s, and he helped make that Sacramento Kings team relevant. He was the go-to guy. He was a great scorer, but also during his time, during his peak, he made that team better. Took them on several deep playoff runs, including that infamous 2002 conference finals where they were screwed in Game 6. But Chris Webber was the leader of that team, the go-to guy. He was getting Kevin Garnett. He was getting put in the same category of power forward as Kevin Garnett and Tim Duncan. With all due respect to Webber, those guys were better than him as players, but Webber was pretty close. One of the top power forwards of his era, certainly worthy of a spot. Number 2, we're going to move on to back to the 70s. That's going to be Jerry Lucas, another dominant player from his era. Multi-time All-Star, All-Star Game MVP, the better players of those Cincinnati Royals days, and one of those originals. He was one of the greats of the early years, the early years of the NBA's rise in popularity. Now, sometimes you probably hear his name, but if you look closer in his career, now you realize, oh wait, he was one of the best players of his era. I mean, I'll put him slightly over Chris Webber. Both guys were great players during their peak, but Jerry Lucas was a key contributor to the Cincinnati Royals' glory days. But there's only one player I got better than him. The Big O, Oscar Robertson. The OG of point guards. He was the original poster boy for what a great point guard is. And he led their last championship run. Now, he also did lead a championship run with the Bucks, but here we're talking about the Kings/Royals. Oscar Robertson, considered the greatest point guard of all time by some, even over Magic Johnson. The original king of triple-doubles. Just an all-around great offensive player. And he was part of the Cincinnati Royals. He was the main guy of those Cincinnati Royals glory days. And like I said, easily when you look at his resume, a statistical dominance, and you look at his accomplishments as a player, as a teammate, easily the greatest Cincinnati Royals/Kansas City King/Sacramento King of all time. There's my top 5 list of Kings. You guys give me your top 5. And until next time, also make sure to drop a like and subscribe as well. Leaving a comment with your top 5 Kings/Royals of all time. And I'll catch you next time. We talk about the top 5 San Antonio Spurs, so stay tuned.